All right. Welcome everyone on this beautiful Sunday from wherever you are coming from. I see some of you are coming from Hawaii and Canada and all over the US, so I'm very excited. This is the inaugural Transformative Language Arts Network, or TLAN, Virtual Salon. I am your host, Amanda Faye Lacson. I graduated with my Master of Arts in TLA at Goddard College and am now the Membership and Outreach Co-Chair on the TLAN board. For those of you who are new to TLA practitioners are people who use the written, spoken, and sung word for personal and social transformation. This can take many different forms, from writing story to poetry to memoir and more. Today, you will see a variety of work from TLA network members and artists. We hope to do these virtual salons every few months. Everyone who reads today will be a member of TLA Network, and I hope you'll consider joining our community or donating to the organization at tlanetwork.org. A few housekeeping notes. As you may have seen in the pre-show screen, there is no tolerance for hate speech, harassment, or bullying. This event is being recorded and will be distributed publicly, so please keep your mics muted during the presentation part of the program. However, please engage with the artists and community through the chat box. The artists definitely want to hear your feedback. They want to know what resonated with you. And any questions you might have for them, we are collecting, and we'll be able to ask some of the artists during the talk back after the presentation. For your best viewing experience, please set your view on the upper right-hand corner if you're on your computer to speaker. This event, as I said, this event is being recorded and will be distributed publicly. Thank you so much. Please enjoy the TLAN Virtual Salon. First up, we have, hold on, let me pull up her info for you. 1 second. First up is going to be Kierra Perry. Kierra is a poet. Hold on, her face is this right here. We're just doing our checking. Okay, hold on. Okay. First up is Kierra Perry. Kierra is an administrative professional by day, writer, artist, and student by night. Depends on the night. Her Instagram is at Kierra Perry, so please follow her there. Welcome, Kierra. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. And hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm going to be reading a medley of poems for you all. And so the first poem that I have is called Knees, and it's about a leg who has a crush on another leg. And it goes, I blush just looking at your knee, everything about it, the shape, the stability. I daydream about touching knees. Will the day ever come? I see you and your knee on the street. I watched it give out on you. You fell to the ground and I followed, knees first. Need any help, I wanted to say, but I let our legs do the talking. That is a poem about a leg who has a crush on another leg, specifically their knee. The next poem I have is called Appreciate Nature, period. Frogs speak, you stop. You listen to frog. Birds screech, you stop. You listen to bird. Snail slime, you stop. Look at slime. Frog, bird, slime, we give them our time. That is called Appreciate Nature. I think about snails often. I love snails. The next poem is also snail-oriented. It's called If You Give a Snail a Jetpack. I gave my snail a jetpack. Now we walk at the same pace. It was nice at first, but now she's always asking me to race. She pulls her supercharge, always thinking that she won, 'cause I just don't have the heart to tell her I can run. If only she knew. That's called If You Give a Snail a Jetpack. The next poem I have is about my friend Eugene the carrot. This is Eugene. We're good friends. Carrot so sharp, carrot so candid, carrot knows its roots, carrot so grounded. Carrot knows best, carrot so tubular, carrot so wise, better than cucumber. Carrot cool colors orange and green, carrot good friend, his name is Eugene. He has a name tag and a briefcase. He's a professional carrot. The next poem I have is called Train Sounds. I like this one. I started making train sounds when I run outside, so everyone hears me coming, and then they're not surprised. But people seem to be confused at the whole ordeal, I guess 'cause I have legs and they were expecting wheels. That is called Train Sounds. It's what happens when I go outside and make train sounds. This next poem is special to me because I wrote it in a poetry group with Tracy and Liz. It's called I Wanted to Write a Poem About Earth, but the more you say a word, the more it rings your ears and distorts to ways that sound quite weird. Earth, 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 boing, 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 boing. I'm writing this, and now I can't help but imagine if the earth did not in fact spin, but instead it boinged, boing, boing, boinged. I wanted to write a poem about earth with graceful thoughts like respiration with trees or breath as a gift, but the springing, boinging earth, 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 earth has taken over my brain, 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 boing. These are my boinging earths. I have a few more. This is one that's untitled. I'm open to suggestions. It's quite short. It's about a spoon. Spoon got dirty. Need a spoon wash. Oops. Spoon covered in hot applesauce. That doesn't have a title. I have 2 haikus and a closing statement. They're both haikus about times of need. This one is called In Times of Need, and it's something I feel deeply. Maybe you'll relate to it as well. It goes, if I only had a Cheeto, perhaps more than one. If I only had a Cheeto Frito-Lay snack, I might be better. I wrote that in a time of need. Suppose I was needing a cheesy snack at the time. My final poem, before I have a closing piece, is a haiku called Help. And it goes like this. Help, 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 help. Help, 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 help. It's a haiku called Help. And the final piece I have is not really a poem. It's about the date June 25th, and it's based on fact. So today's June 25th, and in honor of today, here's a factual piece. Today is Strawberry Parfait Day and Catfish Day. not to be confused with Put Your Catfish in a Strawberry Parfait Day, which is tomorrow. That's a piece called June 25th, and it is a wonderful June 25th. Thank you for giving me the space to present some of my poems. I will give it to the next poet.
Thank you so much, Kierra. That was awesome. That was such a delightful, refreshing way to start off our afternoon. Thank you. All right, next up is Judy Fort Brenneman. Judy is an award-winning author and playwright, occasional poet, and writing coach with expertise in helping writers who have interesting neurologies. Her short work has appeared in everything from literary magazines to wayside signs and museum exhibits. For more information, visit her website at greenfirecreative.com. Welcome, Judy.
Thanks, Amanda.
Let me stop this share. Sorry. All right, where are you? I'm gonna find you. Okay, hold on. Hey. Oh, tech. I know you're somewhere. Okay, Judy was helping me with tech earlier. So Judy, how do I find you?
Okay, somewhere. If I'm
Oh, there
talking,
you
I
are.
should be highlighted. So you can find me that way. That works.
Perfect. Thank you
I
so
love-
much.
I love technology, really I do. I recite that to myself many times every day. So thanks, Amanda. Excuse me. I am recovering from a bit of a cold, so I may be making unfortunate noises periodically, but I will see if I can get my voice to last through the whole thing. This is a poem called Thinking About. I'm thinking about forgiveness, that external demand couched as reassurance. To forgive, a salve guaranteed to heal, a direct path to salvation for all concerned, but most especially for those wronged, as if it's all our own fault. Refusal to forgive equals evidence of refusal to get over it, come to terms, move on, heal, deliberately willful, stubborn, so unforgiving. I am thinking about definitions of how forgiveness carries an apology, explicit or implied. Shouldn't the perpetrator ask for forgiveness? Shouldn't there be more than one right answer? Shouldn't no always be an acceptable, appropriate option? How apologies response must always be, it's okay, like you're welcome after every thank you. It is never okay. It never was, it never will be, and therefore forgiveness is not an option. I am thinking about if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. About how my kid sister wrote in flowery longhand. Back then, they didn't know about good touch, bad touch, and how I scrawled wrong, this is not new knowledge, on a piece of scrap paper and thanked her for the card. She meant well, but she didn't write back. And I worried because she had a daughter, the only granddaughter. Was anyone listening? And about that day when I tried to have the very hard conversation with my other sister and her husband, a nice enough guy, explained the reason things were so calm there was because she kept the secret. And all I could do was shrug. He was probably right. And I still think about how secrets should never be kept, even when you think no one will listen. I am thinking about how impossible the choice is to choose between being accepted by your family or being the one who says it right out loud, even when no one listens or even pretends to. And about how I finally confronted him, our father, 1998, the year before he died. He died May 7th, 1999, 66 years old, younger than I am now. About how I'd worked every day for months practicing self-defense moves under the watchful eye of my son's martial arts teacher, including 3 hours on the mat the day before, just in case, and how, after hours on the plane and in the rental car, I could barely walk, quads so stiff, worried that if it came to it, I wouldn't be able to fight, forgetting that I'd fought and won before, more than once, forgetting that this time I wasn't alone, and about how he admitted, indirectly, that perhaps what he'd done was wrong, but somehow believed for the first year or so I'd caused his behavior, but that he gradually understood, he gradually came to realize, he gradually became aware that maybe something was wrong with himself, and that even now, sometimes he had to leave the room where grandchildren were playing, and how painful that was, how sad. And about how later I realized he'd never apologized, not once. And about how later at the potluck in the backyard, after the service at the funeral home, my brother took me aside, said his stepdaughter needed to talk to me. And I knew what she would say. And I said, yes, of course. And I listened to my brother's stepdaughter tell the story I already knew. I am thinking about how awful I felt to be fooled, that he'd lied just enough to be believed, and how I thought I'd known better than to be fooled by now, and there would never be any apology, that forgiveness was the wrong thing for anyone to demand from me, to insist that I offer it. It was not okay. It will never be okay. And about how all my energy drained out of me as I listened to my brother's stepdaughter, how weary I felt, so tired, all I could do was listen, despair filling every cell of my body. I'd spoken out years before. I'd been assured that everyone knew, but now I knew that everyone lied. No one had believed. Even if they believed my own story, they didn't believe it could be anyone else's story. I am thinking about how I couldn't fix anything, hadn't prevented anything, that all I could do was listen, and how later, in the safety of 1,500 miles between that backyard and my therapist's office, my therapist said, "You listened. The most important thing you can do is listen." And how the anger rose up in me again, and I began to write again. I am thinking about the first writing competition I entered, my essay taking second place because, the judge's notes said, even though it was powerful, well-written, everything they were looking for, one of the criteria was that it be publishable, and they couldn't imagine any place that would publish a piece about that, no matter how well-written. And about how maybe 2 years later, the news broke, Marilyn Vandiver Atler, Roseanne Barr, incest is everywhere, hundreds, thousands, words everywhere, survivors everywhere. And I'm thinking about how even though that second place essay of mine never got published, I read it at the Desert Writers Workshop and everyone applauded, told me I was brave, and how, as if by some strange twist of the pen, sharing that essay gave them permission to write the stories they thought were too awful to even mark down on the innocent paper, let alone read out loud in front of strangers. I am thinking about how for me it was easy and hard to write what others called hard stories. Easy because of the release, I thought, but which is only part of the truth of it. Hard because pen on the page was the only time my body allowed emotions to surface. I am thinking about how I always wrote alone, didn't want anyone to see how ink breached my body's armor, skin and paper stained by mucus and tears. I am thinking about how the page listened without judgment. I am thinking about how it still listens like a trusted friend. I am thinking about how easy it was, how easy it still is to read my work, how speaking aloud is a kind of distance between me and the story, outside me, emotions left on the page, where I can poke a stick at them, find some measure of insight, sometimes a smear of peace, proof of surviving long enough to thrive. I am thinking of how, after every reading, people came up to me and said, "Me too," and they shared their stories, and all I could do was listen. I am thinking about how there is no end to this. I am thinking about how 18 years after my father's death, 4 decades after he began assaulting me, 16 years after my first essay about incest was published, 14 years after Marilyn Vandiver's memoir was published, 11 years after Tarana Burke coined Me Too, after countless essays, books, memoirs, after all my listening, the Me Too movement erupted, as if sexual abuse was a new phenomenon, as if we hadn't known back then about good touch, bad touch, as if we'd finally reached some critical mass and God damn it, it will stop now, but it won't. So I'm thinking about how I'm left with listening, and also how much I've learned and shared and encouraged, because I believe in the power of story, whether you're listening to it or reciting it or creating it or changing it or living it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judy. I'm going to take a minute or a second, a few seconds to let that sit. Judy, I invite you to read the chat because a lot of people had a lot of things that resonated for them for sure. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Ronda Miller. Ronda is a poet and life coach who specializes in giving voice to trauma. She has 5 books of published poetry and teaches the importance of voice for trauma transformation in concert with the Johnson County, Kansas Library School of Trades and Department of Corrections. Follow her on Facebook at Coaching for Life Ronda. Welcome, Ronda. Please unmute.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and to the other poets who are here today. And Judy, thank you for sharing some of your story and for breaking the ice for me. As someone who teaches in corrections in a co-ed class, I know that the first meeting that I have with my students, I need to let them know that I'm one of them, that I'm not any better than they are, and that I've had similar life experiences. So I'm going to start off today with a couple of poems about my father, who killed my mother, and then he was later killed in homicide a couple of decades later. This is called Dad. Sometimes you skip over the things in therapy that are the reason you are in therapy, but the man standing invisibly by the door, holding his head in his hands, is my dad, and he can't speak, and I can't speak, so I sit through that session and the next, mute and muted. I dream of my decapitated dad, who is the dad of my childhood reality before he died. His was the face cut from photographs by my grandparents that included my mom, siblings, and me. The headless, fatherly man was the man who kidnapped me and moved every month to keep from getting caught. We were hungry and scared and freezing, and I got tired of hearing the beatings of children and women through paper-thin walls, never knowing, not knowing, did they hear mine too? But I know he had a head. He laid it in my lap one time when I was 5. I touched his beautiful auburn hair, smoothed it away from his face. I saw it again at 19, years after the Kansas court system had decided Colorado wasn't the place I should live, and he should live in prison for a time. The last time I saw his head was in a coffin after his murder, but it was connected to his body. I didn't check. I can't be certain. In my dreams, waking and sleeping, it is the headless dad I see. He stabs my grandfather to death for molesting me. He looks over my shoulder as I brush my teeth. He appears in closets, in the dark, shadowy bottoms of swimming pools. He is always watching, looking out for me, just as I am always looking, watching, waiting for him to give me permission to speak. The next one is Visceral Child. I wrote this after I found out that he was responsible for killing my mother. Daddy, I'm your visceral child gone wild. I'll report you for your slightest deed. Setting the record straight is meant to appease the universe. I am your visceral child who vomits at the mention of your name, the one who defended you time and time again, but no more. Daddy, death was your name long before I recognized the protective game my mind was playing. My visceral body wanted to shout, tell all, scream out what I had seen. Hearing your voice at 17 sent me spiraling into a destructive zone. I'd rather have died than have known the truth, but I know it now. My visceral child no longer needs to restrict knowledge from her mind. All it took was a sister saying it out loud. He confessed so long ago, I'm not sure why I'm just now telling you, but I thought you needed to know. Daddy death killed your mom when you were 3. I'm going to break away a second and read a few poems from my students today, if I may. This one is called Motherless Child. So many of my students were also in foster care and adopted and sexually abused, and the majority of them never had books in the homes that they were raised in. I feel like a motherless child walking alone, unguided. Life's first experience is tarnished by the lack of unconditional love because I was created under conditional lust. Her womb, full with no concern, she poisons growth in every way and every turn. Birthing the unwanted, disgusted at first sight, shameful tears. She cried, her breast swollen with milk, a baby's cry for help. Starvation will kill, leaving the child breathless and still. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, searching for answers of love in all her denial. She conditioned her love to me so that I may never see what a mother should be. In my tragedy, always and forever, I will love her unconditionally, even though I am a motherless child. This is called Heart That'll Never Change. I learned just like you, same things, same waves, like our folks in the slave days. The way you treat another, pathways. Get the rope if you want to hang. They hate because my color change. We are just not the same. They told me to be ashamed, but I'm trained to endure, not to succumb to pain. Be a leader of today, hit hard like tsunami waves. Lay them down like a child after they eat and play. To the heart I dedicate, and that's one thing about me that will never change. And this is I remember. I remember the day like yesterday when my favorite uncle went away. There I was playing cops and robbers. Never did I imagine the cops would rob me of the only positive male influence I had. Damn sure wouldn't be my dad. I watched him suffer as he slid down his 1987 Cutlass, pleading for air, blood dripping from his hair, blood everywhere. I thought police protected and served. What a devastating disappointment to a 9-year-old who used to collect baseball cards from patrolmen we used to call heroes. The day we lowered him in the ground was hard for me. Farewell to the only father figure I'd ever had. I still remember the smell of his cologne. Every so often, I still smell it. I'm going to read one more poem, if I may, to end on a little bit more of a positive note. We wrote about Mother's Day last class 2 weeks ago, and tomorrow we'll be writing about fathers. So this one's called Mind at the Bay, and this was written by my former husband and children of my father, Dimitri Shredders, who died 17 years ago. Mind at the Bay. My mind goes back to the bay, feel the need to be there along its bitter-smelling shore, watch its black and silver water wash against the tidal break. Small live things scurry there between shadow rocks and cracks, buoyed by summer clouds, thick as a woman's hair. Infant thoughts in gentle arms when Papa bathed me in the sea, washed clean as he could wash a clam, dark eyes celebrated in the salt and heat as God-given healing spices. Recreated all of life was in his face when he walked along the beach. He set the time for tides. My mind goes back to when my father told the world what to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. And please check out the chat for the lines that really stood out to our audience. Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have Elizabeth Chesla. Elizabeth Chesla's forthcoming debut work of fiction, You Cannot Forbid the Flower, is based on her father's experience in the 1956 Hungarian Revolution. Co-founder of an embodied writing group for women, she facilitates writing and yoga workshops, develops humanities content for educational publishers, and serves as an editor for emerging authors. Keep up with Liz at elizabethchesla.com and on Instagram at Liz Chesla. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you very much. Really honored to be here and to be sharing my book. This is my first reading, and this is the book, and I'm very excited. It's something I've been working on and wanting to write for a very, very long time. So the book itself is a hybrid novella, and it's composed mostly of flash and micro flash pieces, along with some poetry, some fairy tales, historical documents, and photographs. It deliberately blurs the boundaries between fact and fiction. And the epigraph, which I'll share with you, the epigraph to the introduction is a quote from Anne Sexton, and it reads, "It doesn't matter who my father was, it matters who I remember he was." My parents divorced when I was young, and for most of my life, my father was in absence, and I didn't know very much about him. So this book was driven by my need to explore who my father was and why he made some of the choices that he did. It was also driven by my desire to share the story of the Hungarian Revolution. My father was a freedom fighter and then a refugee who fled to the country, to the United States after the 12-day uprising was suppressed by the Soviets. And the story of the revolution seems to me to be just as important today as it was during the Cold War. So I'd like to share a couple of chapters, they're all short, to give you a glimpse of the revolution and of my father, both as I remember him and as I imagined him to be. So the first chapter is from the introduction, and it's called 3 Memories I Have of My Father with a Gun, in reverse chronological order. 3. Standing with my father on the ridge, the highest point of his property, the day he teaches me how to shoot. I am 12 and terrified of the gun, of falling off the edge, of disappointing him. From this side of the ridge, we can see all 5 ponds on his property. From the other side, Canada. The lily pads are dime-sized dots in the distance, perfect targets. My father stands behind me to help me adjust the rifle, tells me to aim through the crosshairs. He steadies me, then steps away. I shoot, scream, and stumble a few steps backwards, surprised by the strength of the recoil. My father laughs, tells me I missed by a mile. He lets me try again. He is not disappointed. 2. Watching my father shoot a porcupine he has tracked and cornered in a tree. They're killing the trees, he tells me, showing me a wide stripe where the bark has been chewed almost all the way around the trunk of a sugar maple. 1 shot and the porcupine falls, blood trickling from the wound in its side. I am 10 and horrified. My father has nearly 200 acres. Do a few dead trees really matter? I know better than to ask, but I can't swallow the question. It buries with the others in my throat. 1. My father chasing my mother out of the house. She threatened to leave after he punched another hole in the wall. He threatened to get his gun. She holds my little sister, hurries my brother and me out the front door. I am 6 and terrified. Does he point the gun at her, at us? I only remember running in our pajamas into the car, into the night. The next chapter is from part 2, which begins in 1945. So I'm jumping back in time and goes 1945 to World War II and leads up to and through the revolution. The revolution began with massive peaceful protests in Budapest. In this chapter, I imagine my grandmother, who actually lived quite far from Budapest at the time, and my father. I imagine her reflecting on the protests she witnessed earlier that day. She takes care of my father. My father dies in his mother's arms, October 24th, 1956. As the first night of the revolution turns into the first day, my father, 2 years old with a bad cold and a fear of the dark, wakes up coughing. My grandmother picks him up and holds him close as she makes him warm tea with honey. She pours herself some palinka, plum brandy twice distilled, then settles with my father in a rocking chair. In the soft glow of a bedside lamp covered with embroidered lace to diffuse the light, my grandmother sings to him softly. The lace that covers the light is a piece she'd made when she was pregnant with her first child, all the anticipation and fear of motherhood sewn into the cloth. The sewing calmed her, the planning, the precision, the repetition, the quiet shh of thread gliding along thread. How you start with the center of the flower, seed, the hardest part. How you move outward from the middle of each petal or leaf, stitching in one direction to the end, then back to the center, sewing in the opposite direction to create a fanning effect. How the thread does what you ask, no more, no less. How predictable it is. How you can always undo a stitch that isn't right, start over, change direction, change the thread. My grandmother's thoughts turned to the protest, to the elation she felt as the demonstrators marched down the street underneath her window. The hammer and sickle emblem she'd cut out of the Hungarian flag still lay on the floor by the window. In the morning, she'll burn it. Her heart swells briefly with pride. The great tapestry of Hungarian history, she thinks, will never be the same. The people of Hungary rose up and changed the direction of the thread. A new pattern would emerge, a pattern of their choosing, and it would be beautiful. Lulled by the gentle back and forth of the chair and the sweet burn of the palinka, my grandmother finally falls asleep. As she and my father dream, hundreds of Soviet tanks and thousands of troops enter the city, find their way through the dark, foggy streets to their posts, Parliament, the party headquarters, various public parks and squares. Others are tasked with patrolling the streets. The rumble and groan of metal wake my father and grandmother as a pair of tanks turn onto their street. Through the fog of sleep, my grandmother recognizes the sound and scrambles to turn out the light, but it is too late. Ordered to shoot at anyone or anything that moves or any window with a light on, a T-34 gunner aims, pulls the trigger, and blows them both into the neighboring apartment. The sun rises on their bodies, a field of red and pink peonies in the rubble. And yes, that was one of the times in part 2 that my father died. The epigraph to part 2 is actually in which my father dies many deaths, any of which might have happened. So I've put him in different situations throughout the revolution to really sort of give a picture of all the different sacrifices that people of Hungary made. But in part 3, my father escapes and builds a new life in America. And the last chapter I'd like to share is called What I Remember. Early 1970s. My happiest childhood memories are from when we were on the boat, which my father had named after my mother. Before the divorce, before my father and mother slept in separate bedrooms. I remember my brother, sister, and me in our life jackets, sitting at the front of the 33-foot Chris Craft, jumping off the sides, my mother taking pictures, my father carrying us on his back to shore. Thank you very much. Thank you all who read before me and who's coming up ahead. This has been delightful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. Okay, next up, we have Oyah Beverly Reed Scott. Oyah is a woman that has known pain intimately and lived to tell the tales through story, poetry, and monologue. Follow her on Instagram at WRYTYRWOMYN. Sorry, thank you. Welcome, Oyah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here with such beautiful writers writing such powerful work. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this program. So I'm going to do two pieces, and they both turn out to be a tribute to two Black women that I loved and admired so much. One is to Toni Morrison, and the other is to the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. So we'll start with Toni. She said, "We die, that may be the meaning of life, but we do language, that may be the measure of our lives." I wrote, "We die many times and in many ways. We must die to something if we are ever to experience this life as a rich, diverse harvest. For death is a certain and necessary function of life, as is love, pain, loneliness, doubt, wonder, joy, and orgasm. All of it is life, and it is also death. And that may be the meaning of life, to die, to travel in the realms of the mystery, magic, and sacred madness where all of the gods and goddesses reside, some basking, some gambling, some binding, or simply being. That I don't know for sure. It is far beyond my gifts to say the exact orientation of any being, particularly the divine ones. What I do know is that when I am truly in that space of death, when letting go is complete, that is the time I can feel my calling. I know when the divine is near. I can feel them in all of their wise, dark forms, lit from within by the light. I can see them when I look here now in your faces. But we do language. We stare deep and long, beaming our love or our hatred at its intended targets. We clench our fists in celebration, affirmation, but also in rage. We hold out our hand and speak volumes, palm over, open at the waist, language. Palm open, fingers spread, arm outstretched, language. We can give a thumbs up, thumbs down, middle finger up, head down, legs open, arms out, legs crossed, tears falling, language. When we listen to a lover, though their words break our hearts and we stay because we are willing to own our part. When we compliment a stranger because we sense their lack and their need, language. When we mean the things we say and then do the things we said, when we drop the mask and tell the story of, yes, our glory, but more, our shame, when we write it down on paper, butt naked in the rain, not because we're sexy, but because we're baptizing our pain, we do language that may be the measure of our lives. Let us think carefully about this. Toni Morrison could have used her massive gifts and master of language to write volumes on matters of standard beauty, religion, philosophy, science, or high society, especially knowing what she knew about the meaning and the measure of life. But she didn't. She reached down into the deep, into the blackest night, the darkest mysteries, magic, and madness of Black folks in America. She grabbed the barbaric nature of chattel slavery by its hideous neck and wrung it until the lies died right before our eyes. She conjured us a resurrection of beauty, love, courage, and humanity, then poured it forth like libations for our dead children's souls. May the meaning and measure of my work have a quality selected with care, of value and effect that is helpful. May my life and my language matter to someone somewhere who needs a reason to believe. Thank you, Toni Morrison, for daring to go where no one dared before. And also thank you for listening to my words. The other piece for Aretha is a little more lighthearted. And I have to read it from the phone because everything that could go wrong went wrong. And the printer just stopped printing and I couldn't get the big 16-point font I wanted. And so here I am. Work with me, please. This is Oh Me, Oh My, a tribute poem for Aretha Franklin, trying to describe that state when she sang that, oh me, oh my, I'm a fool for you, baby. I want to say love is a chameleon, changes my feelings into colors, shapes, and sounds. Love is an institution of higher learning and higher ground. This particular kind of love in the Queen of Soul song grows your ability to endure, teaches you how to breathe underwater. In this love, there is no safe space to explore its cuts and breaks. You do it on the run, trying to hold on to what you believe is yours. Love in this song grows your matted hair to the floor, opens and shuts 1,000 doors. It causes your body to clench with need and despair and throws your poor hands up in the air. Lays your spirit down for days in prayer, walks you crazed up to a stranger's door. You just gotta know for sure. But please don't let me find what I'm looking for, because I'm tired this time. I'm gonna have to settle this score. Never more, damn it, never more. But the bell don't work, so you hide and wait till 4. Birds are singing when you get to your door, and they're in their sleep like they never started a war. The familiar smell and the taste of their life force, blood red roses in a heap on the floor, knowing there is only truth in this perfect fit of your membership. Your soul soars, you say softly, maybe, you say softly to yourself, once more. Yes, once more. Aretha sings, you know that I am crazy, babe, and closes the door. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oyah. There's some claps on with muted people. So, just so you know. Love it. Okay, so next and last up is John L. Swainston. John started writing poetry to cope with feelings of isolation during COVID. He is a member of the Mystic Poet Society, the Writers Place, and the Kansas City Writers Group. John is a retired finance executive, college adjunct professor, and Army veteran. Keep up with John at johnswainstonpoet.com. Welcome, John. Please unmute.
I suppose I ought to unmute so I can
Thank
read
you.
for you. I'm going to start with a line from a Mary Chaplin Carpenter poem, Jubilee, and it's about walking. I can tell by the way you're walking, you don't want company. You are mad. Your room is a mess. You did not clean it as asked. You got scolded. Your head is down, eyes fixed on your toes. Your stride is short, each step taken with great care. You are on the garden path, the same as me. From behind, I step alongside and extend my hand. I can tell that you see it, but will you take it in yours? Without a look, you reach for mine. We stroll together, no words spoken. The sadness will soon be gone. Father and daughter, hand in hand. I'm very fond of 4-letter words. And one of my very favorite four-lettered words is K-I-N-D, kind. Sometimes kindness will sneak up on you, and this is one of the times that happened to me. Kindness given. Walking down the circular path to the vaulted room, radiation treatment. Turning the corner, she looked up, smiled at me. She just finished her treatment, was 7 or 8. Snuggled in her arm, she carried a teddy bear. Does that help? I asked. She smiled, yes. The next day, walking the path, there he was, sitting on the handrail, her teddy bear. Oh no, look, she forgot her bear. No, she didn't. I looked at the tech confused. No, she left him for you. My dad always told me that real men don't cry, but I did. And yes, it helped. I got it. I have to read this one. This is me in the 50s, early 50s. My first kiss. It was second grade in recess. I threw the ball right at her. That is when it happened. The first steps in my direction of my first love. Connie Cook, blonde and blue eyes. When she reached me, she bounced the ball she was holding off my head. I was not expecting that. It would be several months at recess that it happened. My first real kiss. Not from mom, grandma, or my aunt. Nope, it was from Connie. Pressed lips together. It was awkward, but wonderful. As said in the thing, I was an Army vet, and I wrote this poem, You Send Me. See if you can, for those here that are my age, this is a group of song titles from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So I wrote this poem using song titles. You send me. You send me to a place I do not want to go. How did you do it? Don't be cruel, but I am told silence is golden. It is going to be a hard day's night, and the sun ain't gonna shine anymore. There is something in the air. I've got to get a message to you. There is a bad moon rising. We got to get out of this place. It's now or never. Release me. And they did 3 years later. There's a new moon over my shoulder, and I did not send home a soldier's last letter. I am alive and glad all over. What a wonderful world. And last, one of my very favorites. This is Christmas of 1952. It was Christmas Eve. I would be 8 in 5 days. Up early to see what was under the tree. Nothing, not a single thing, not even a birthday present. My mom made the 2 one, less expensive, never understood that logic. Mom shouted, breakfast. We ate. I tried not to cry. Eggs, Spam, toast. Ugh. Dr. Seuss was totally wrong. I do not like eggs and Spam. Mom, I'm not eating the Spam. Johnny, that's my you're in trouble name. Yes, you will. I did. Dad shouted, get dressed, we have to go feed the horses. Walking toward the barn, there were 3 stalls and runs, 2 with horses and 1 empty. It was not empty. There he was with a large red bow around his neck. My mom had snuck up behind me. That is Charlie. Merry Christmas and happy birthday, son. Dad just grinned. I was the proud owner of my very own Charlie horse. That's it. And if you haven't joined our group, please join. It's wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you. And please feel free to unmute yourselves and give everybody a round of applause. Thank you so much. Yay! Yay! That was awesome. I loved the variety of works. Rhonda also mentioned it in the chat, the variety of work that was presented here today. And I'm so excited that all of you came and stayed and got to witness this fantastic presentation. So we have a few questions and with time to do a little bit of a talk back. And I will start it off, but if anyone feels compelled, feel free to jump right in and go ahead and ask a question. We're a smaller group, so we can just keep it casual like that, I think, today. So my first question related to us in the Transformative Language Arts Network and Virtual Salon is, how does Transformative Language Arts, or TLA, inform the pieces that you shared today? Sorry, give me a second. Anyone, please feel free to start.
So I'll jump in, not being a shy person at all.
Fantastic, thank you.
The poem that I read was actually triggered by an assignment in a TLAN class that I took recently called Identity and Belonging by Renu Thomas. And in the class itself was a push for me to dig much more deeply than I typically do into why I do what I do and who do I think I am, in a lot of different ways. And she brought in many writers and poets and other artists with whom I was not familiar. So it was really enriching and challenging experience. And this particular piece was in response to Worcestershire's quote in a poem called Home. And one of the things that I wanted to, well, I won't say that I wanted to, that I had to really push myself on, because it's like, I don't want to phone pain. Who wants to phone pain? But what I really was digging at, I think, for myself, is that central question of so much of our identity is defined by where we're from and who we are of. And in what do you do when you need to really separate from that and you cannot accept that it is part of your identity? I don't want to be related to those people, you know, that sort of feeling. And at the same time, it is fundamental to my actual identity. And so how do you mess with that? And that's part of what I explore in a lot of my writing anyways, but in this poem, it came out in a very different form. And it made a difference in how I identify myself in certain ways as well.
Thank you so much. Dawn, please go ahead.
I was very moved by what I heard today, and I'm so pleased that I got this invitation to attend through my association with the Columbine Poets of Colorado. It's wonderful. I'm in Hawaii. It's still morning, and I can't believe that I can hear and see and just have this lovely interchange with poets from all over the nation. Thank you so much. I'm very interested in turning life's difficulties. The very word transformative got me, because my writing that became serious writing after many years of journaling and poems was actually transformative for me, to dig in deeply to my life stories and bring them into being. I never realized that so many things that are difficult in life that one experiences, in a way, it's the shame. You want to present a very really smiling, successful, upbeat view of yourself to society, to friends, actually close friends you can be more honest with, and people you love that you trust. But in general, people feel very ashamed if they have some very difficult things lurking there in the corners in their youth or their growing up times or their early marriage, marriages plural sometimes. So I love the way that you can transform. Well, John said he liked 4-letter words and he was so polite with ain't. But actually you can turn very bad shit into gold by writing it well and making it into art. And then something happens within. So that's my view of getting into those very difficult things. Also, it's a release, of course, for you become in a way a little bit like a god. My group here on Kauai, the Live Poets Society, has discussed this, that when you create, you're always challenging God a little because you're daring to get out there and make something and say to the world, here it is. So there's the transformation of our lives then that becomes the true gold. So thank you very much for this, introducing me today. I would be very interested to follow this further. Aloha.
Aloha.
Ah, thank you so much, Dawn. Yes, I'm very excited about the work that you are doing. And are you, John, were you about to say something? No. Liz, please go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up on what you said, Dawn, and that one of the things in another story in the book, my father actually took he did trench art. So he took the exploded shells and transformed them into vases and candlesticks and all sorts of wonderful things like that, trying to make beauty out of all that destruction. So I appreciate what you said.
And I wanted to mention that one of the things I talk to my students about is that we are all here to share our stories. It's kind of the whole point of being alive. And I think it was Judy, somebody else mentioned that whenever we have presented something about whether it's a loss to suicide or homicide, inevitably, or sexual abuse, somebody inevitably comes up to me and says, I too have experienced that. And thank you for bringing it to light. I think we all start off with shame. It's something that we're taught from little on. And then as we hear other people speak, if I've been to a poetry reading by someone and I think I've gone deep and I hear them read and how deep they've gone, and it gives me permission to go deeper as well. So it's really important to listen to other voices and to respect our own. People judge their own voices. I don't judge what other people say or write or share, but I always find that gremlin insecurity that we have within ourselves, that for whatever reason we think that we're not worthy. So it's a fascinating transformative language arts, I think, as much as the transformation of who we are to ourselves and the ability to write from a different place. Join. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization.
Thank you, Rhonda. Oyah and then John.
The word itself, transformative, it just kind of rolls warm in your mouth. And, you know, I like the idea of transformation. It's what I've had to do over and over and over again. So when I saw, and I graduated from Goddard at age 62, and I saw that brochure there, and it just, I said, that's the word that I've been looking for, trying to describe why I think I'm here. So to use my words to help to transform what is often painful or frightening or debilitating, but to add something to it to make it where we can all warm our hands by the fire of those words or something like that, you know? So I'm really grateful and to be a part of it, and that you created it and made it available. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Oyah. John?
Yeah, I'm usually reluctant to do this, but this is what COVID did for me. That's my name down at the bottom. I always get a kick out of that I look at this and it's me. So this is what COVID did. I wrote this book and got it published, and it was fun. And thank you all very much for listening to all of us.
Thank you, John.
Is it available on Amazon?
Oh,
Yes, actually it is. But you have to look under my name, not the book title. You have to look under my name. And I was shocked when I did it because there's a relative of mine that wrote a book and I didn't know it.
Awesome. So for all of you, since we're talking about transformative and the process of transformation, for all of the artists, this line stood out to me in Judy's reading. Didn't believe it could be anybody else's story. And I love that so much because it really gets to the heart of why we write and share our stories. So what is something that happens for you as a writer between the process of writing it down, writing the story down, and then sharing it out loud?
– Okay, do you want me to jump in first again? John, do you want to take it first?
Whoever would like to jump in, you're welcome.
Want to flip a coin, Judy?
All right, no, go ahead. I was first last time. You go first this time.
Okay. For me, it's kind of a relief. I have this funny habit. I write in red. Everything I write is in red pen. And to me, it's like taking the blood out of my body and writing with that. And there's some other things that I have not written in my life that I think I've just gotten the strength by listening here that I'm probably going to write about now. And I think that would be a tremendous help to me. I've been dealing with depression for a very long time because of my various medical problems, but just also my history as a child. Anyway, but I feel I have permission now to write that, thanks to the other authors here. And I will do that. But it's a relief. It's cosmic, kind of. It's just a tremendous relief to the body that it's out there. And plus, I knew nothing about my parents, and I'm leaving everything I can for what's left behind me, since there's nobody in front of me.
Awesome. Tracy, go ahead.
It's a really interesting question, Amanda, because I don't often share my work aloud. So when I do, there's this interesting moment where it goes from this internal sort of seed feeling thing. And then as it begins to move out of my mouth, there's a kind of visceral sensation of it kind of rising through my body and moving out. And then it sort of spreads out and it feels like roots, mycelium. I don't know how to describe it, but it just, to me, begins to weave this intangible or ineffable sense of connection. Almost a gifting, but mostly this sense of suddenly I become woven into whatever is going on around me or whoever gets to receive those words in the most gentle and compassionate way. So there's what I got.
Well, Dawn.
Well, as a poet, I'm always looking for the best similes. So to make it short, I'd say to me, when I've been able to read difficult things and find that everybody is either moved or giving back a great deal of compassion, aloha, for me, it's the same as jumping into a cold wave. That first brisk hit is the fear, and then you're in it. Oh, it's lovely. So you're just in it, and it's one with the beautiful water. So it's good.
Thank you, Dawn. Rhonda.
And I think for some of it gets back to secrets. It's depending on what we're writing or sharing. Certainly if I'm sharing humor, it's not difficult. It's fun. It's easy for me. If I'm sharing some trauma, particularly something I hadn't written about or shared, some of the items I've written about, siblings and family and close friends maybe didn't know about. So it's just that release of that secret that we've kept that has shamed us for so long to be brought out into the open and to have people not shun us. You know, our fear is that they're going to think, oh, wow, she's really weird or she's got to be crazy. And instead we find so many people, whether they've experienced or not, most people can identify with us on some level as to what we've experienced, and to be accepted and to have others say that they've shared something like is just a huge release.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. I am curious. You mentioned humor, and one of the things that I thought about, especially with John and Kierra's work, but we all sort of use humor to go through life, to get through life. So for Kierra and John, especially, but anyone feel free to answer. How does humor help you in your work and in the form of transformation or in the process of transformation? I see Kierra, she's on a bus, everybody. Bear with
Hello
her.
from the bus. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, I'm about to get off on my bus stop. So, well, I was thinking, especially with the last question as well, about this big change from writing and introducing yourself. I often find when I'm writing, I have this tendency to lean into humor. And I think it comes from a place of wanting to make myself laugh. If I'm feeling, I don't know, life is so hard. And so one of the ways that I get through it is to laugh about most things and make fun at things and see the world in some kind of more magical way than often what it is. And so I feel like it's like a release in the same way that whenever I write, I learn something about myself, what I find is funny, what I need to, how I need to lighten my surroundings in that time. And then presenting it outward to you all is like this going from seeing myself and what I needed to hear and laugh at, and then introducing it to someone else in their world. And would you like to laugh at this with me? And it just brings me joy to laugh and to make fun with other people. I think that's what's in it for me personally. I could say more, but I'll leave it at that. Sorry, I'm walking to work.
Thank you so much, Kierra. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a thing that I require a laugh of a day. I have to have one good laugh every day. I depend on some of my friends who send me emails to provide that because they're just funny people, and particularly an old Army buddy. But I think it's essential. Humor is absolutely essential to our life. It takes the burden of and stress away, if even only for a minute or a second. It lets you relax. a good belly laugh. And I get this from my grandfather. I have a lot of stuff from my grandfather. He's the guy that taught me how to swear like a sailor because he was one. But, you know, he liked jokes and some of them were great. I like laughter. That's the bottom line. So I put it in my poetry as much as I can. That makes sense, I
Thank
hope.
you. It does, absolutely. So I have a question for Liz, actually. It's not humor based necessarily, but it's kind of magical because Kierra was talking about seeing the world in a magical way. And when you talked about your imagining your father's death through different situations, to me, that's some sort of magical realism.
Mhm.
So how did you make that choice, and how did that help the process of the story that you were trying to tell?
Yeah, that's a good question. Part of it was practical because, you know, the Hungarian Revolution only lasted 12 days, but the more I read about it, and I had to read about it and to learn about it because my father didn't really talk about it at all. But the more I researched it, the more stories I wanted to tell, and my father couldn't be everywhere at once, you know. And the idea actually partly came from, you know, this age of ours, even going back to the 1950s, there's so much documentation in photographs. And I spent so much time looking through photographs and just imagining, is my father here? Is my father there? And literally looking through all kinds of archives and everywhere I could, trying to find him in different places, and found. So then it was just sort of, you know, moment of thinking, well, I could put him here and I could put him here and I could put him here because he can be all these people and I can tell all these stories. And so for me, that was what I wanted to get out of it, to be able to let him stand in for other people. And I still have so many more. So there's other projects that are going to come from it because there's just, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. On a very practical level, I think this is for everybody. Susan Villardo asked for all of the writers, what is the most helpful support for you as you write, and or what keeps you from writing or stalls your writing?
So we have like 4 hours left before we stop this
Yeah.
salon, right? Okay,
Yeah.
Susan, here's the rundown. Everything stops my writing. Nothing stops my writing because it's choice. I hate to admit that, but it's true. What helps me is remembering that everything is a first draft. First drafts are supposed to be shitty. If it's not shitty, I haven't done my job yet. It helps to remember that we have the right to flourish and to take up space. And for me, that involves boundaries. So when I am, somebody said, oh, I was on I did my second Zoom call today. My first Zoom call, one of the people on that call said that she was very pleased because she's older. She's like my age, 60s, 70s, 80s, I don't know, somewhere in that range. She has finally trained her husband to not bother her when she's writing. And so she has writing mornings. And my immediate question was, how did you do that? Because I'm still working on it. So life is life, right? All the gremlins in my head are always noisy. And I have, you know, run my business, I do my writing, all of those things. That's all part of life. And so my writing practice looks like it's infill sometimes, and sometimes it looks like it's a dedicated thing that I am spending all my time with, depending on what else I have to deal with. The things that truly get in the way and make me stop are when I think, oh, I can't do that because everybody's going to realize how angry I am. And what gets me started again, because a lot of my writing begins from a place of anger. It's like, you blankety, blankety, blank, and then I'm off and running, right? That's not true for everything, and it's certainly not true for everybody, but that tends to be true for me. And then at some point I remember, nobody cares if I'm angry. They really don't. What matters is that I get something on the page and eventually make it coherent. And that actually is what lets me actually keep my pen moving. And then there are practical considerations as well. For me, I have particular I write longhand for almost everything early drafts. And I'm a little bit hybrid now, but most of my drafts are longhand. I'm very particular about the pens that I use, the kind of paper, the notebook I have. I'm very fussy about that. Yes, it's part of the habit, it's part of the ritual that helps me make the transition from I'm not writing right now to, oh, I am writing right now. There is a transition involved in that. And for me, it also helps to know that I have a deadline or an assignment, even if it's self-proclaimed. Not for everything, but if I don't have some kind of I want to do X by thus and such, either that is imposed, like in Renu Thomas's class, it's like, this assignment is due on Wednesday. It's like, oh, I got to get it done. Or when I was on a recent writing retreat where I said, this is what I want to accomplish while I'm here. I want to make progress in these things. For me, part of my ADHD brain, if I don't have those things, I forget that that's what I was going to do. I literally forget. And I might write something else or I might not, but it's like I'm lost. It's like, okay, nope, it's on the list. You're going to do it. So, and then I share stuff. I have writing buddies, and I share stuff with my coaching clients. We swap stuff back and forth, and that helps too. That's part of the community aspect. So short. That's my medium-sized answer. I don't have a short answer for that. It's my medium-sized answer.
Awesome. And sharing stuff, like for me, is definitely part of, oh, I better write something then. Like if I'm going to share it on this particular date. So yeah, and we're going to have more of these salons to do that. Sonoma, is that correct?
Senta.
Oh, Senta. It's Senta,
Yeah.
comma. Okay, Senta. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing your writing. This is really kind of exciting, you know. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. So I think it's really important for me as a kind of in the closet poet writer that I have a group or of friends, other writers that give a damn whether I say anything or not, so like, it doesn't have to be a lot of people, but a supportive group and hopefully of others that that have some skill that I'm interested in. Like through the pandemic, I had a coaching client that turned into where she's now my mentor in formal poetry. And I've been a free verse poet all my life. And now I'm learning at the ripe old age of old formal poetry, meter, metric lines, how to write in something other than iambic pentameter or something, and it's like a whole new world. And it's challenging. So I would say having a supportive group of knowledgeable others, and also to be challenged, to be constantly learning about my craft, and being open to new ideas. Thanks. That's it.
Thanks so much, Senta. That's great. So we have about 4 minutes left. You're welcome to stay on the Zoom. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. I want the artists with Oyah's amazing tributes to Toni Morrison and Aretha Franklin, I would love the artists, all of them, including Oyah, to say one artist that gave you a transformative experience as we close out. I can call on people if people would like. Liz.
I would, well, there's a lot. But I'm going to pick Tim O'Brien, and particularly his book In the Lake of the Woods, because I felt like what he did structurally in there really inspired me to play with structure. Yeah.
Thank you. Judy. Sorry, I forgot I was doing.
It's like, but one. At this precise moment, I would say it's a toss-up between, these are both authors, between Lewis Owens and Ursula Le Guin. And I think Ursula Le Guin, because I read her very first story she ever published, The Word for World is Forest, when I was junior high, I think, maybe sometime back in the day. And it was in itself a way of understanding how to look at the world. I was already involved in environmental movements and such back then, and that's what that story is about. And Lewis Owens, because his writing is wonderful and extraordinary, and I miss him. He was gone too soon. And his writing is in areas that are appealing to me, and I always learn something different from his work. It always surprises me as well as delights me, and reminds me that I can do better. I can keep improving, which is really important to me.
Thank you so much. Kierra, if you're still there.
I'm still here.
Awesome.
I'd say my answer for Transformative is also one of my favorite poets. You probably know him, Silverstein, Mr. Silverstein. And I think with him, it was something about the way that he, most of his most favorite work that he's ever done is full of this darkness and pain, and it's a bit grotesque, but the things that he's remembered for are his happy children's poetry and such, which was kind of his least favorite thing to write often. He was kind of bullied into writing for children, but it softened him in some other ways and brought him joy. So I loved the way, how prolific of a writer he is as well, especially with songwriting as well. My heart is with Shell.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Rhonda.
I was going to say, my heart is with Shell sounds like the beginning of a poem to me.
Totally.
My favorite poet by far is William Stafford, a really well-known Kansas poet, and then of course became poet laureate. And the reason that he's been so transformative for me, or his work, is because of being asked to read at what would have been his 100th birthday celebration. I read his poetry for the first time. And we were supposed to write a poem that was based off of something of his that we read. So I read the one that really just immediately prompted a poem for me was Traveling Through the Dark. And I wrote a poem called Moonstain, which became the title of my first book of poetry. William Stafford's son was there. He heard the poem. He came up to me afterwards and asked for a copy of it. So we emailed back and forth, and he gave me some suggestions on the poem, and then he wrote blurbs for my first two books. But Stafford, I teach a lot in corrections, because each one of his poems not only shows a love of nature, which has been so instrumental in healing in my personal life. I was adopted at the age of 7 and went to live on a farm and lived in northwestern Kansas. Because of that connection with Mother Earth, I felt mothered since I hadn't had a mother. But also each one of his poems has an amazing amount of moral discussion within, and I think that's very helpful to the students that I work with.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. John.
Well, I can't do one, so I'll do two. The first would be Karen Miriam Goldberg. And the
There
next
she
one
is.
is Esther Berlin, who is a urban Indian, the Dying Nation. Her two poetry books are just incredibly fascinating. I love them both.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. And Oyah, take us out. I mean, you did Toni Morrison and Aretha Franklin, and that was amazing. But I'm
Well,
sure
I
you've got
have to say thank you. Thank you for that. But I want to acknowledge, of course, Maya Angelou and Mary Oliver. And then I didn't want to leave out the great Alice Walker and J. California Cooper. Those are the women that move me and inspire me to write.
Who was that last one, Oyah?
Her name is J. California Cooper, and she writes these short stories about women that have struggled, and then some kind of way they make a way out of no way, and the language is good. And yeah, I like short stories.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. And this has been amazing. I just wanted to say that thank you for putting on the salon. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I second that.
Thank
It's
you,
been
everybody.
great. It's been wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you, Kierra. Thank you, everybody, for attending and sharing. And I'm sure we could talk for many more hours. But yeah, I'm excited to have met everybody. And please, if anything resonated with you today, please visit tlanetwork.org or join us in our community at tlanetwork.org/membership. And we will be following up with you with everybody's links, so you don't have to hunt for it all. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks.
Thank you.